Hi everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another helpful beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and notification bell and you'll always know when we're posting new content. So today is going to be another video that I'm calling our retro series because as some of you may know, about a year ago we started doing a lot more with filming, and we've since upgraded our equipment, our lighting, our filming style. We've taken a lot of great feedback from you all. So we're starting to redo some of our older videos that were our stitch tutorial videos. So those were the little short videos that showed you a basic stitch, the ins and outs of that basic stitch. So we started last week with even count flat peyote, because that's such a popular stitch, especially for beginners. And so today, the video that we are redoing is spiral rope, which I am an enormous fan of. It's sort of my go-to whenever I need a neck piece for something, a pendant or something like that, because there are so many variations you can do to balance it out with what you're hanging from it. So that is what we're going to go over today. So this is spiral rope done with 2 different colors in a size 11 seed bead. And we're going to go back to this one later because I'll use this one. Notice it still has a needle attached. I'm going to use this one to show you how you would attach it to a clasp. But for the sake of the video and to be able to show you in the most clear way possible, I'm going to use some size 8 seed beads. So that way things are just a little bit bigger and easier to see on the video. Let me dump out a little bit of each one here. We'll just dump them all out. Go big or go home, right? Okay, so if you've never done spiral rope before, there's 2 things to start off with. First of all, you have a core color and an outer color. Now we're doing a very basic, simple rope for this demonstration. Obviously you can make them much more elaborate, and I'm going to show you some variations after this tutorial, so you're definitely going to want to stick around for some fun ideas. But in this case we're starting basic, so I have this matte color, which is going to be my core color, and I have this shiny green color, which is going to be my outer color. For tutorial videos, I often try, if I can, to work a matte seed bead into there because it's easier to see on camera, as well as a dark thread, so you can most easily see what I'm doing. And again, this matte color is going to be my core color, which is the one I'm going to have to go into with my needle a bit more, so I want you guys to be able to clearly see it. So we're going to start off by picking up 4 of our core and 3 of our outer color, just like that. Now spiral rope, before I keep going, it's basically made up in 2 steps. There's step A and step B. You'll start with step A and you'll do it once, and that's what you're going to see first, and then after that you do nothing but repeat step B over and over and over again. So this first step we do here, our actions here, we won't be doing again. So this is just a tutorial, so I'm not really worrying about the length of my tail here. But to touch upon this just for a second, if you're doing a very long spiral rope project, you actually want to have a really nice long tail, just as long as your working thread. And the reason for that is once you have worked up a bunch of your spiral and your working thread is a bit shorter, before you have to add on thread, you can just go ahead and stick a needle on your tail, which is just as long, and you can start the spiral from the other side and it's completely seamless. So it's a really great way to work with a bunch of thread at once and not have it feel like a bunch of thread, and have one less join in your thread, which could be a point of weakness. So good little tip there. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go back up through just the 4 core beads, looping back around. And that way when I pull these down, they sit in a nice little loop with each other, just like this. So right now this thread right here, this lower thread, that's just my little tail, and my working thread is pointing up. So I know it doesn't look like much of anything yet, but once we start repeating those step B's, you're going to see something beautiful work up. So the way I like to hold my spiral is I always like to expose the core to me, and I like to have my thread pointing up and away from me. This is what I find most comfortable. Try it out. If you find it's a little awkward to work with, try something else, but for me this works. So now that was my step A. Now we're starting with step B. Step B, again, we'll repeat over and over and over again. So step B is picking up 1 core bead and my 3 outer beads. And this is going to be my loading sequence from now on, over and over and over again. 1 core, 3 outer. This number you can play with. This is just what I'm doing for this spiral. If you want a different look to your spiral rope, perhaps your outer beads, there's 5 of them or there's 2 of them. This is just, again, what we're doing for this spiral here. So exposing that core to myself, I'm going to look at the top bead, which is where my thread is coming out, and I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go up those 3 beads. So I'm ignoring that little one at the bottom there. That little guy right there, I'm ignoring him. And I'm just going back up the top 3. So now your needle is coming out of the same exact spot that your working thread is. So that's how you'll know you're going in the right direction. I'm going to pull this all the way through, and it brings this little loop of beads down. And now here's an important step. You're going to take that little loop you just made. See this little loop we have here? And you're going to push it back and hold it back. Now, I pushed mine counterclockwise. You can do counterclockwise or clockwise, it's up to you, but once you pick a direction, so for me that was counterclockwise, you have to stick with it. Otherwise you won't get a spiral. So I took that loop and I just pushed it behind the core. And now the last little bit is that little core bead that we had picked up when we loaded on those most recent beads. We're going to go up through that, and it's going to take it from sort of sitting in that loop that we just pulled back, and it's going to force it to sit up in line and straight with the rest of our core. So our core has just gotten longer by the length of 1 bead. So you can see we started with 4 in our core when we first picked up our beads, and now we have 5. And the best way to tighten spiral rope is to pull up and against the core. So I'm holding and just pull right up, and that's how you're going to get what you just did to tighten up nicely. Now, this was the first little section of beads we did here, and this was the second one, and you can see that the second one sits just a hair higher. Here we go, there's a good angle. It sits just a hair higher, or a bead's length higher than the previous little section there. That's because every time we do this, every loop we make is going to be 1 bead higher than the last. So the important part is this little loop here that you pushed back, it has to be held back. You can't let it flip back around because you'll lose your spiral. So now we're going to pick up our beads again, 1 core, 3 outer beads, like that. Again, I'm holding this, so I'm exposing my core. And as this gets longer, I'll always hold it so I'm exposing just the top, the most recent beadwork, and the top of that core. So I'm exposing my core. Look at your working thread. Look at the core bead that it's coming out of, that top core bead. Count down, 1, 2, 3. Go up your top 3. And now you'll see that we've left 2 beads at the bottom that we're going to ignore. That every time we do this, that will get longer and longer because we're always just dealing with the top 3. So again, my needle's coming out the same exact spot that my working thread is. We pull this down, you can see our loop get smaller and smaller there. You can see this is the next bead, that little bead right there. That's the bead that we're going to go through next. We're going to flip this back. Use your use your finger just to keep it held back. You can see where your thread is. It's kind of coming out of that top core bead, but you still have that 1 bead after it, that new core bead that you have to go through. So just head right up that new top core bead and pull it in line with the rest. Okay, so now if we look at the 3 groups of green beans we added, green beads, did I just say green beans? Green beads. You can see that each one is about a bead's height higher than the last one, and you can see that spiral starting to form. So we're going to do that a few more times. Again, I pick up 1 core, 3 outer. And this core bead here, again, is the one that we'll end up going through after we push our loop back. Look at your very top core bead. Okay, there's a good side view. Look at your top core bead, count down 1, 2, 3, and go up the top 3, so that way your needle and your working thread are both coming out of the same exact bead and on the same exact side. Bring your loop down. Oops, get it caught around your finger. Bring your loop down. Push it back and hold it back with this finger, and don't let it flop back over. You can see our new little top core bead right there, waiting for us to just pop through it. And then give it a nice good tug upwards. It's what I do every time I do a loop. I give it a nice good tug. And again, let's show you again that little spiral forming. Actually, you can even see it this way too. All right, let's just show you one more time before I show you on a smaller bead so you can see adding the clasp. So again, 1 core, 3 outer. It's all in hand positioning. Find your top core bead, and that's the one that your thread's coming out of. Count down 1, 2, 3. Go up your top 3. Pull down your loop. You can see that one right there. That's the next one we have to go through. Push it back, hold it back with your finger. You can see how it's sort of lined there, lined up perfectly for us to go through. Just head right up. Give it a tug. You can see each one is higher than the last one. You can see that spiral starting to form. So hopefully that made it a little bit more clear as far as the creation of it. I'm going to show you now some variations. So this is the one I showed you at the beginning. This is done with a size 11 seed bead. And this is the same setup as the one I just showed you. So we have our core beads and our outer beads, and we have the 3 beads on the outside. So my loading sequence for this was the same, the 1 core bead and the 3 outer beads. So you can see that the last thing I did here was I had gone up through that little top, the new top core bead. And then I'm all set to kind of keep going with my spiral, but you can see a lot more of that spiral here. So I'll show you in a minute how you would attach it to the clasp, but let me show you a couple of the other variations. So this is what it looks like when you use all size 15 seed beads. So to see the size difference between the two, you can see it's much more dainty. I actually really love doing spirals with 15s when the pendant that I'm going to hang off of this perhaps isn't too big, because this is very, very dainty. Another thing I really love about spiral rope is that it's a very strong stitch. You have a lot of passes through that core, so it's a really strong stitch. And then lastly, this is another fun one. This is a variation where I used some Swarovski pearls. You can see that fun little spiral when you twist it. Oh, there we go. See that fun little spiral? So in this case, I have my core beads are an 11, and my outer beads are 15s and 4mm pearls. And so my loading sequence was 1 11, 2 15s, a pearl, and 2 15s. That's what I picked up every single time that I did around. So my very first loading sequence, my step A, was 4 11s, 2 15s, a 4mm pearl, and then 2 15s. And then after that, I only had to pick up the 1 11 and then the 2 15s pearl and 2 15s. And so those outer beads you can have a lot of fun with. So, you could use crystals, you could use pearls, crystals and pearls in any size. You could do a really fun Miyuki drop or a check drop. We have those great check drops. They would make a really beautiful bracelet. You could do really anything you want on these outer beads, and you can get so many different variations. And I think this one is just particularly fun. If you went all the way around, that'd make a gorgeous bracelet and very comfortable too. So, showing you now how to add a clasp. I have some more of my 11s here, that purple color. This is the color that I used for the core. And I'm coming out of my top core bead. I had finished up my step B. And what you can do is just pick up maybe 3 or 4 of your seed beads and then go through your clasp, and then 3 or 4 more seed beads. I'm going to do 3 and 3. So that's what I have there. Oops. Pretty simple. And now I'm going to head right back down into the core bead that I'm coming out of. And then you get a nice little beaded loop. And now it's just a matter of reinforcing that loop, because that's really important, because after all this beautiful work, the last thing we want is for this to fall apart, because we didn't want to spend an extra few minutes and reinforce that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the core bead that I'm coming out of, and I'm going to go through the outer loop that corresponds with that core bead's level. So in this case, that's this one right here. And I'm going to go, oops, I should have gone down one more. Make sure you go down at least 5 of your core beads. So that way when you pop up from that outer bead, you're set to go through that last 11. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. So it's going to be going up through this one here. And then now I can head right up into that last top core bead, which is right above the outer beads I just went through. And now I can go ahead and just reinforce that loop. Head right through those beads, through those clasp, through that clasp, down the beads, and then down right into your core again. Okay, and now what you're going to do is you can go down into your core. Again, another at least 4 beads, 4 to 5 beads or more. It's up to you, but no point in going too much further than that. Oops. Head back up into that core, into the outer beads there. That was the second to the last little outer section that I did. Head right up into that last core bead that's at the base of my loop. And then go ahead and reinforce that beaded loop again. Because again, I can't stress this enough. Take the time to really reinforce all of your little areas where you're joining things together, whether it's adding a clasp, whether it's where you had to add on thread. It's so, so important. All right, so now this loop of beads here has now had 3 passes through it. And since this is just a little demo video, I'm going to end it there. And then I would just knot out my thread. I'd do some half hitch knots, weave through my beadwork a bit. And that's how you would add very neatly and cleanly a loop to your spiral rope. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Another fun video we'll have coming in the future is I'll show you how we can do some really beautiful embellishments off of the spiral rope in an additional layer that you do after the creation of the spiral rope. So that's another video you're going to want to keep your eyes peeled for in the future. Let me know down below if that's something that you guys would be excited to see. And it's something that maybe I'll push higher on the list. But that is basically where we're at right now. Let me show you what we've done with all these threads in the way, but lots of fun variations of spiral rope. Hope you guys love this one. Again, try giving it a shot with a larger bead or a simple color combination or a matte colored bead if you're having trouble seeing things, and that may help you. And then have fun with some different variations and send them on over to us. We'd love to see. All right, so we're going to link you below to the basic products that I used here. So make sure to go ahead and visit us on over at EurekaCrystalBeads.com for everything I used here. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. Bye, guys.